Every house, every king, and every battle has its own truth. But there are stories older than crowns, darker than the night, and more dangerous than any blade. They were never written in books. They were whispered to fire, to the trees, and to the dead gods. And today, we dare to uncover one of them. The sea mist rolled over the harbor of Oldtown, curling around the black hulls of ships and the marble towers that watched the waves. Dawn had not yet broken, and the air smelled of salt and oil lamps and parchment, the breath of the citadel itself. It was here, among the bells and ravens, that Samwell Tarly began to dream uneasy dreams. He had been at the citadel for half a year now. His days were spent in study, chains of copper and bronze growing heavier around his neck, and his nights in the archives, where shadows moved like living things between the shelves. Sam had learned to live quietly, to move as soft as a mouse. But tonight, he was not alone. The wind was whispering. He told himself it was only the ocean wind slipping through cracks in the stone, or the ravens murmuring in their sleep. Yet when he passed the locked door of the vault of the untranslated, a voice seemed to call his name, low and rasping, in a tongue he did not know. He froze, his candle trembling in his hand. The vault was forbidden. Only the Archmaesters carried its keys, and even they spoke little of what lay beyond. It was said that within were books so old their words had gone blind, scrolls that smelled of fire and salt, fragments of tongues that men should not speak aloud. Sam had never been brave. He had never wanted to be. But curiosity, that strange small flame, stirred in him stronger than fear. He pressed his ear to the iron door. At first, nothing. Then, a faint shuffling sound, like dry paper turning itself. Then, a breath. Sam! Well? He stumbled back, nearly dropping the candle. The flame wavered, casting wild shadows up the wall. His heart thudded in his chest, and for a moment, he thought he might run. But even as he did, he saw it. A faint line of light under the vault's door. A crack, glowing softly like embers beneath a log. The vault was never lit. He took a trembling step closer. "Hello?" he whispered. "Is someone there?" No answer. Only the faintest sound, a whisper, not of a person, but of a voice caught in time. Sam pressed his hand to the iron door. It was warm. He felt the warmth spread through his palm, and in that moment, the latch gave. A soft click, as if the lock had simply forgotten its duty. He should have fled. He should have gone to Archmaester Ebros or even to Alaris, who was still awake most nights, reading by candlelight. But something stronger than reason drew him forward. The door creaked open. Inside, the vault smelled of dust and oil and something faintly metallic, the scent of secrets. Shelves rose around him, ancient and endless, filled with scrolls wrapped in faded leather. Cobwebs hung like curtains, and in the center of the room, upon a pedestal of obsidian, lay a single book. It was bound in dark leather that seemed to shimmer faintly in the candlelight, as if the hide itself were alive. The edges of its pages gleamed red, not gold, and faint letters shifted across the cover like shadows. He stepped closer, his breath held tight in his throat. He could not read the writing. It moved too quickly, changing shape as though aware of his gaze. Valyrian, perhaps, or something older. His candle guttered. For a heartbeat, the room plunged into darkness. When the flame steadied again, he thought he saw, only for an instant, that the book had moved. A breath escaped him. "Old books don't move," he muttered. "It's just the light, Sam. Just the light." Yet even as he said it, He felt it again, that warmth from the iron door now pulsing beneath his skin. His hand, without his will, lifted toward the cover. The moment his fingers touched the leather, a whisper rushed through his mind. Not sound, but thought. Words that were not words, coiling and ancient. He felt something looking at him from inside the book, a mind vast and cold and curious. He jerked his hand back. The book shuddered. The letters across its surface froze into place, and for the first time, they held still long enough for him to read. The binding of flame and flesh, in the dark tongue of Valyria. Sam stumbled backward, his heart hammering. The dark tongue. That name had come up once before in his studies, a language whispered to have been forbidden even among the Valyrians, used only by blood mages who sought to bind dragons and men alike. A tremor ran through the floor beneath his boots. Somewhere above, a bell began to toll. 3 deep, booming notes. The hour of the owl. No one should be awake but the watchmen on the high tower and the ravens in their cages. He turned to flee. But the door that had opened so easily before, had sealed itself shut. The flame in his candle flickered and died. Darkness swallowed the vault whole, and in the black, something began to whisper again. This time, it was not calling his name. It was asking him questions. Sam pressed his back against the door, his breath quick and shallow. He could not understand the words, but he felt their meaning as one feels heat from a forge. Who are you? Why have you come? Will you open me? He clutched the candle to his chest like a weapon, though its light was gone. I'm no one, he stammered. Just a novice. I didn't mean to. The voice laughed. It was soft, dry, and terrible. Then, silence. When Sam finally found the courage to fumble for the latch again, it yielded at once. He stumbled into the corridor, gasping, the door closing behind him with a hiss like a sigh. He did not look back. Not until morning, when the ravens screamed over the rookery and a novice was found dead in his bed. His body burned black as pitch, and his eyes turned to ash. And in the vault, far below, the book waited, whispering softly to itself in the dark. The morning bells of Oldtown rang slow and mournful, their echoes sliding over the rooftops like weary ghosts. By the time Samwell Tarly reached the rookery, the corridors of the citadel were already thick with whispers. A novice had died in the night. Burned, they said. No candle had fallen, no hearth had flared. The sheets themselves had caught fire, and no one had seen flame until it was too late. Sam stood in the doorway, his stomach knotted tight. The body was gone now, taken to the alchemist's yard for study, but the smell lingered. Smoke and char and something sour underneath. A group of gray-robed meisters were murmuring among themselves. Archmaester Marwyn was there too, his heavy chain gleaming in the morning light, his eyes sharp as glass. It was not common fire, one of the younger meisters was saying. No smoke marks on the walls. The boy's blood boiled in his veins. I saw the skin. Marwyn cut him off with a raised hand. Enough. The citadel is not a place for gossip. He turned, his gaze falling on Sam. You there, Tarly. You look pale as milk. You knew the lad? Sam swallowed hard. No, Archmaester. Only by sight. He tended the lamps on the western stairs. Marwyn's eyes lingered on him for a moment longer than comfort allowed. You've been keeping late hours yourself, I hear. Reading where you shouldn't. A dangerous habit, that. Sam's mouth went dry. I only study what's permitted. Of course you do. Marwyn's tone was unreadable. Mind you keep it that way. He turned away, speaking low with the others. Sam backed out of the room, heart pounding. The Archmaester's words had not been a threat exactly, but they were a warning. Someone knew he had been near the vault. That night, Sam could not sleep. The face of the dead novice haunted him. Though he had never seen the boy alive, his imagination filled in the rest. The scream, the smoke, the sudden flash of red light. He kept seeing that faint glow beneath the iron door, the warmth that had spread into his palm, and worse still, he dreamed of the book. In his dreams, the black leather breathed. Its pages fluttered without wind. From its spine oozed a slow trickle of molten gold, forming words that crawled toward him. You opened me. You belong to me now. He woke with a gasp, sweat beading his brow. The candle beside his bed had burned itself down to a stub. For a moment, he lay still, listening to the distant call of a raven. Then, faint and clear through the silence, he heard it again, a whisper. Soft, patient, coming from the corridor. He rose, every muscle stiff with dread, and opened the door. Nothing. The hallway lay empty, washed in moonlight. Only a draft stirred the edge of his robe. Yet the whisper came again, curling from below. From the direction of the vault. He should have turned back. He knew that. But the whisper carried something almost pleading in it this time. Not command, but calling. Samwell, it breathed, so softly he almost thought he imagined it. Come. He took a lantern and descended. The citadel was a maze of stone and shadow at night, its passages hushed but never silent. The wind moaned through narrow windows. Chains clinked faintly where they hung in alcoves. Sam's steps echoed as he went deeper, past the familiar halls of the scholars, into the lower vaults, where the walls grew damp and the air colder. When he reached the iron door, it was already ajar. The lantern's flame bent inward, as though drawn by breath. The book was waiting, resting open on its obsidian stand. Its pages glimmered faintly, lines of crimson script moving like serpents across the parchment. He could not read the words, but he felt their pull all the same. "Why do you call me?" he whispered. The air stirred, carrying a dry rustle, like old silk. A shape flickered behind the book, a shadow, not his own. "You touched me. You heard me. You are bound." The voice came from nowhere and everywhere at once. Sam gripped the edge of the stand. "I don't want your binding." "I only wanted to understand." "Understanding is the first chain," the voice said, "and chains are how we bind dragons." The words struck him like a blow. Dragons. He thought of Daenerys Targaryen across the sea, of the tales carried by sailors, her beasts of fire and wing. What if this book contained truth? Knowledge of how such creatures might be tamed or destroyed? The whisper grew softer, almost coaxing. "Read me. Only one page. Then you will know." Sam's eyes fell upon the open leaf. The letters shimmered, rearranging themselves into shapes he somehow could comprehend. Valyrian, but twisted, alive. He read aloud. Just a single line. At once, the flame of his lantern turned blue. A wind swept through the chamber. The shadow behind the book stretched taller, its edges breaking apart like smoke. "Seven save me," Sam gasped, stumbling backward. The light flared, then died. When it returned, the book was closed, and on the floor before him lay a black feather, its tip smoldering as if from fire. The next morning, the citadel was in uproar. A raven in the rookery had burned, the same one that bore messages north to Castle Black. The maesters whispered that it was a bad omen, a sign of ill luck. Sam said nothing. He spent the day copying dull texts in the library, pretending not to feel the feather still hidden in his sleeve. That night, he sought out Alaris the Sphinx, whose sharp eyes missed little. The young novice sat alone in the gardens, tossing pebbles at the moonlit pond. "You look as if you've swallowed a ghost," Alaris said when he saw him. "What's wrong, Sam?" Sam hesitated. "If I tell you, you mustn't think me mad." "That seems likely," Alaris said lightly. "But go on." So Sam told him about the vault, the book, the voice, the fire, and the raven. He spoke quickly, low and fearful. When he finished, Alaris's playful smile was gone. "The dark tongue," he murmured. "I've heard of it. Valyrian blood magic, lost since the doom." His gaze flicked toward the distant tower of the High Tower, its beacon glowing red in the night. If that book is awake again, something worse than fire may be coming. Sam looked at him, frightened. "What should we do?" Alaris's eyes glinted. "We find out who opened the vault before you. That door does not unlock itself." A cold shiver passed through Sam. For the first time, he realized he might not have been the first to hear the book's call, and perhaps he would not be the last. The next night brought no rest. Samwell Tarly sat hunched over his desk, the candlelight drawing deep shadows across his tired face. The black feather lay before him, no longer smoldering but strangely heavy, as though it carried a weight beyond its size. Each time he turned his eyes from it, he felt the faintest hum, like the echo of a heartbeat. He had tried to throw it away. Twice. The first time, he had cast it into the hearth, only for the fire to sputter and die, the feather untouched. The second, he had dropped it from the bridge above the honey wine. At dawn, he found it again on his pillow, dry and perfect, as though it had never left his room. Alaris arrived quietly, his steps light as a cat's. "You've not slept," he said. "I can see the moon in your eyes." "There's no sleep for me now," Sam murmured. "It follows me." Alaris leaned closer, studying the feather. "That's no raven's feather," he said softly. "It's from something else. Feel the edge. It's like glass." Sam touched it and winced. The surface was smooth but sharp, faintly warm. What could it mean? Alaris's gaze grew distant. Fire that does not burn. A book that whispers. A feather that returns. It's not a thing of chance. "I think the book wants something of you, Sam." The words chilled him more than the wind that slipped through the shutters. What could it want? "Knowledge seeks to be known. Power seeks to be used," Alaris said. "Perhaps it's both." That day they walked the halls of the citadel in secret, searching for any record of the vault's history. Most of the archives spoke only of its locks and protections, wards older than the citadel itself, spells written by Valyrian hands and sealed after the doom. Only one volume, bound in cracked green leather, held more. "The Vault of the Untranslated," it read, "was built in the days when dragons still flew above the city of Old Valyria. It holds not mere books, but living tongues, words that consume those who would command them." "Living tongues," Sam whispered. "Words that consume." Alaris nodded grimly. "Your book is one of them." By sunset, they agreed to descend together that night. Sam's heart quailed at the thought, yet curiosity burned through his fear. If the book's magic had awakened, perhaps it was calling something greater. Or someone. They met in silence after the hour of the bat. Alaris carried a lantern covered with thin red glass to keep its glow low, and a small dagger of dragon glass at his belt. Sam brought only his courage and the feather, wrapped in cloth. As they moved through the corridors, every whisper of their footsteps sounded like a scream. The citadel felt alive, the stones breathing, the walls leaning close. Sam could hear faint whispers again, though no mouth spoke them. When they reached the lower vaults, the air grew colder. The iron door stood wide this time, no warmth, no glow. The vault was waiting, silent as a tomb. "Stay close," Alaris whispered. They stepped inside. The candlelight wavered across shelves of books that had not been touched for centuries. The air smelled of old smoke and something sweet beneath, like blood turned to dust. And there, on its pedestal of obsidian, the black book lay closed. The letters across its cover were still, no longer shifting, but faintly, beneath the silence, came a steady rhythm, like breathing. Alaris approached, blade in hand. "It's sleeping," he said. Sam shivered. "Books don't sleep. This one does." He reached out to touch it, but Sam caught his wrist. "Don't," he whispered. "Last time I did it..." The book shuddered. The breath of air that followed blew out their lantern. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but darkness. Then a faint red glow began to seep from the pages, pulsing like a heart. The voice came again, but this time it spoke in clear Valyrian. "Blood of men, blood of flame. Who wakes me from my binding?" Alaris froze. "It speaks." Sam's voice shook. "We don't mean harm." "You opened me once," the voice hissed. "Once is enough. The chain is forged." The ground trembled. Dust rained from the ceiling. The shelves groaned, their bindings creaking like old bones. Sam stumbled back, clutching the feather. "Stop it!" he cried. "We don't want you." But the voice only laughed, a dry, hollow sound that filled the vault. "Then you should not have listened. The first ear that hears the dark tongue cannot unhear. The words root deep." A faint light blossomed at Sam's feet. The feather had begun to glow, lines of molten gold running through its veins. It lifted into the air, spinning slowly, shedding sparks. "What's happening?" Alaris shouted. Sam didn't answer. He could feel something pulling at him, not his body, but his mind. Images flooded him, a vast city of spires wreathed in flame, dragons screaming through the sky, men in red robes chanting as they carved runes into their flesh. The world burned, and the same book lay open on an altar of black stone, its pages dripping blood. Then, just as suddenly, it ended. The feather fell into his hand, cold once more. The vault stood silent. Alaris exhaled, shaking. "7 hells," he breathed. "You saw something." Sam nodded weakly. "Valyria, I think it was the doom. The book was there. It saw it happen." Alaris sheathed his blade. "Then we need to find who sealed it here. Someone must have done it, and they must have left a record." They fled the vault before dawn, neither daring to look back. The next day, Sam visited the Hall of Faces, where the oldest masks of the Archmaesters hung. There, among the dust and shadows, he found an entry carved in Old Valyrian on a stone tablet. The Book of Flame and Flesh was brought from the smoking ruins by Maester Herodon the Blind. Its keeper was consumed, its words chained in shadow. Let none speak them, lest the doom rise again. When he told Alaris, the young novice grew grave. If Herodon sealed it, and his soul was taken, then what of the one who died last night? What if the book feeds, one mind at a time, until it can rise again? The thought chilled Sam to the bone. That evening, as the last light of day bled across the sky, he returned to his chamber. The feather lay where he had hidden it, but now its color had changed, no longer black, but pale gray, like the ash of burnt paper. He touched it, and the whisper came again. "You cannot run from a chain once forged." Sam closed his eyes, trembling. He could feel the book waiting beneath the citadel. its breath rising and falling with his own. He knew, with a sinking certainty, that the vault had not opened for him by accident. The book had chosen him. By the third day, Samwell Tarly's hands no longer stopped shaking, even when he clasped them tight. The citadel had grown uneasy. The novices whispered of lights beneath the high tower at night, and of a strange smell, like burned parchment and sea brine, that came and went with the tides. Ravens refused to roost in the lower towers, and 2 had torn their own feathers until they bled. Sam could not tell what frightened him more, that the whispers might be true, or that he himself might somehow be the cause. He hid the ash-gray feather within the folds of an old vellum scroll, afraid even to look at it. Yet the longer he ignored it, the more the air seemed to hum around him. Candles guttered when he passed. Ink dried faster than it should. He began to see things too, reflections that lingered a heartbeat too long in polished brass, shadows that moved when no one did. By nightfall, his resolve broke. He went once more to Alaras. They met in the upper garden, where a single white tree grew, its bark smooth and pale as bone. The moon was thin and sharp above them, casting the world in cold silver. Alaras was already there, perched on the stone bench, turning a coin over his knuckles. "You look worse than a man with ghosts on his heels," Alaras said quietly. "Perhaps I have them," Sam muttered. "It won't stop. I see it in my dreams, even waking. The book's voice, the burning city, the screams. I think it's inside my mind now." Alaras studied him for a moment. "Then we go to someone who can help." "No one here will believe me. They'll think I've gone mad, or worse, that I meddle in forbidden things." "Perhaps someone who has meddled before," Alaras said. "There is one who might listen." Sam frowned. "You mean Marwyn?" Alaras nodded once. "The Archmaester of magic. They call him Marwyn the Mage for a reason." The thought sent a chill through Sam. Marwyn's chambers were whispered to be filled with things better left unseen. Crystals that glowed with no flame, relics from Ashai, and bones carved with runes that thrummed like living veins. Yet fear of the unknown was less than fear of the voice that followed him. That night, under the quiet tolling of the second bell, they made their way through the halls to Marwyn's door. The oak was scarred by age, marked with runes Sam could not read. Alaras knocked once. The door swung open. Marwyn stood within, broad as a bear, a copper lamp burning in his hand. His chain hung heavy around his thick neck, glinting with links of every metal known. His small eyes glittered when he saw them. "Tarly," he said, "and the Sphinx. I wondered when you'd come." Sam blinked. You knew we would?" "Books that breathe tend to leave their scent," Marwyn said, stepping aside. "Come in." His chamber smelled of herbs and oil, smoke and salt. Scrolls lay open on every surface, some scorched at the edges. Strange shapes hung from the rafters, dried lizards, glass spheres filled with liquid that shimmered like molten silver. Marwyn motioned them to sit. "Now, tell me." Sam did. Everything. The vault, the whispering book, the fire, the dreams. He even showed the feather. When he finished, Marwyn's face was grave. "I warned the conclave long ago," the Archmaester said. "There are powers in this world older than our citadel, older than men. The doom of Valyria was not a fire of chance. It was the unbinding of what their mages chained beneath the earth. That book is one of the keys." Sam swallowed. "Keys to what?" "To the soul of fire itself," Marwyn said. "The Valyrians bound flame to their will. Dragons, volcanoes, even their forges. But such bindings hunger. The language they used was alive. The dark tongue. A word spoken in it can twist the flesh or wake sleeping spirits. Sam's voice trembled. It's trying to wake something again. Marwyn nodded slowly. It would, if the right words were spoken. I read a single line, Sam admitted, ashamed. Marwyn's eyes darkened. Then it's begun. The air seemed to grow heavier. There is still hope, the Archmaester said after a pause. The book feeds on the mind of the one who opens it. But if we learn its true name, we can unmake its bond before it takes you. Such knowledge is hidden deep, beneath the high tower, where the citadel's oldest records sleep. Few dare go there. Alaras leaned forward. Then we'll go. Tonight. Marwyn regarded them both. You have courage, I'll grant you that. But know this. What sleeps under the high tower is not just parchment. It remembers. He gave them each a vial of dark glass. If the whispers grow too loud, break this. The smoke within will silence the mind for a short time, long enough to flee, no longer. The descent began after midnight. The stair wound downward beneath the citadel, far below the vaults Sam knew. The stones grew damp, the air colder. Water dripped from unseen cracks, echoing softly. Alaris's lantern cast long, quivering shadows along the walls. When they reached the bottom, a vast door of green bronze barred their way, its surface carved with 1,000 sigils. The lock had rusted centuries ago, yet the door itself seemed to breathe. Sam touched it gently. It was warm. Together they pushed, and the bronze groaned open. The chamber beyond was immense, its ceiling lost in darkness. Shelves of stone rose like pillars, filled with clay tablets and scrolls so ancient their ink had turned to dust. At the far end stood an altar, plain but etched with a familiar shape, the symbol that had glimmered on the book's cover. Sam's heart began to race. He approached, drawn despite himself. As he neared, the air thickened. Faint whispers rippled through the silence, the same voice he had heard before, but multiplied, overlapping, like a chorus. "Sam?" Alaris said quietly. "Do you hear that?" He nodded. Then he saw it. Lying upon the altar was another book. Smaller, bound in pale leather. Its cover bore the same words in the dark tongue, but faded almost to nothing. Marwyn's voice echoed in his mind. Find its true name. Hands trembling, Sam reached out. The letters writhed under his touch, forming a single word he somehow understood. No thrisser. The moment he spoke it aloud, the air split like lightning. The walls shuddered. The ancient book flared with light, and from its pages rose a shape of smoke and flame. A face, vast and cruel, eyes burning gold. "You dare speak my name," it thundered, its voice filling the chamber. "You would unbind what was forged in fire?" Sam stumbled back, clutching the gray feather. Alaris drew his dragonglass dagger, though its blade seemed pitifully small before the thing that loomed over them. "Back!" he shouted. "Sam, the vial!" But Sam could not move. The face bent low, its breath hot against his skin. "You are the chain now," it whispered. "And when I rise, I will burn through you first." The smoke erupted in a rush of heat, and the world went black. When Sam awoke, the chamber was still. The pale book was gone. So was Alaris. Only the faint scent of smoke lingered in the air, and the sound, far above, of the citadel's bells, tolling a warning Sam could not yet understand. The bells of Oldtown tolled through the dawn, a sound like iron lamentation drifting over the sea. Samwell Tarly woke to find himself lying upon cold stone, the light of morning pale and sickly above him. His head rang, his breath came short, and the taste of ash clung to his tongue. For a long moment, he could not recall where he was or what had passed. Then memory returned in a flood. The chamber beneath the high tower, the second book, the face in the flame, and Alaris's voice shouting his name. "Alaris," Sam whispered hoarsely, struggling to his knees. "Alaris." His cry echoed through the darkness and came back hollow. The altar was bare now, the second book gone, the floor scorched where fire had touched it. There was no sign of his friend. No dragonglass dagger, no lantern, not even ashes. Only the gray feather lay beside him, its color now darkened to black once more. Sam lifted it with shaking fingers. It pulsed faintly, a heartbeat beneath his thumb. He staggered to his feet. The bronze door behind him had sealed shut, as though centuries had passed in the space of a night. He beat his fists against it until his knuckles bled, but the metal did not yield. Only when he whispered the name he had spoken before, Nothrisar, did it creak open with a groan, letting in a rush of cold sea air. He stumbled back up the long stair, his lantern guttering low. The citadel above was stirring with the sounds of morning, the clang of bells, the cry of gulls, the shuffle of novices beginning their chores. Yet all of it seemed distant, unreal. Sam felt as though he were walking through a dream that had forgotten how to end. When he reached Marwyn's chambers, the door was open. The Archmaester was gone. His desk lay overturned, scrolls scattered across the floor. The copper lamp still burned, its flame a deep crimson that did not flicker in the wind. But Marwyn himself was nowhere to be found. Sam's stomach turned. He sank to his knees among the wreckage and found, half buried beneath a fallen tome, a note scrawled in hurried ink. "It has broken its chain. The high tower is not safe. Flee if you can. The fire remembers." A shiver ran through him. He turned toward the window. From here, he could see the great tower rising above the harbor, its beacon still burning. Yet something about that flame was wrong. It flickered with a strange hue, not gold or orange, but deep red, like blood seen through glass. The high tower's light had never changed before. He left the chamber at once, clutching the feather to his chest. Every step echoed too loudly. Every corridor felt too narrow. The air was warmer than it should have been. By the time he reached the upper courtyard, the city below had begun to stir uneasily. Sailors pointed to the tower's flame, and small folk whispered that the sea had turned crimson in its reflection. Sam knew, with dreadful certainty, that the book's power had escaped its prison. He found himself wandering toward the docks, unsure even of his purpose. The citadel's walls felt like a trap now, its knowledge a curse. Yet where could he go? North, perhaps, to Castle Black, where men faced death in simpler forms. But he could not abandon Oldtown while Alaris might yet live. He had nearly reached the quayside when a voice called his name. "Samwell Tarley!" He turned, and there she stood, a tall woman in a plain gray cloak, her face half hidden by the hood. Yet he knew her eyes, bright and keen as polished amber. "Alaris?" he breathed. She smiled faintly. "Serella now. The game is done, I think." He stared, hardly believing. Where did you—" "I woke by the harbor," she said, her tone low. "The flame took me, but it did not consume. It showed me things, Sam. Visions of Valyria before the doom, towers of glass, rivers of fire, dragons chained in golden collars. The book was not merely written in the dark tongue. It was born of it." Sam felt a chill despite the heat in the air. "And the thing that spoke to us?" She looked toward the high tower's crimson light. "It called itself Nothrisar, a soul forged in fire. When Valyria burned, part of it was sealed within the pages. You freed it." His knees weakened. "Then it was my fault. All of it. Serella touched his arm. You could not have known, but we can still end it. How? She reached into her cloak and drew forth a shard of something black and glimmering, the dragonglass dagger she had carried before. Fire binds, but only its shadow can sever. We must return to where the chain was forged, beneath the high tower's flame. That is where it draws its strength now. Sam hesitated. Marwyn's note said to flee. He feared it, she said simply, but fear won't stop what's already woken. They set out at dusk. The streets of Oldtown glowed in the red light of the beacon, and the sea lapped at the stones as though tasting them. People watched from their windows as the two figures made their way toward the base of the high tower, but none dared speak. The air was thick with heat and the scent of burning salt. At the great doors of the tower, two maesters stood guard, or what had once been masters. Their robes were charred black, their eyes hollow and glowing faintly with the same red hue as the tower's fire. They did not breathe. Serella drew her dagger. They're not alive. Sam's voice trembled. What are they? Echoes, she said grimly. The book's memory given flesh. The dead maesters moved, their steps heavy, slow. Sam raised the feather instinctively, and to his shock, it flared bright, white as winter's sun. The creatures hissed and drew back, smoke rising from their faces. Go, Serella shouted, while it holds them. They ran through the doors and into the spiraling stair beyond. The heat grew as they climbed, each step harder than the last. The walls seemed to pulse, veins of red light crawling beneath the stone. The air burned in Sam's lungs. At last, they reached the beacon chamber. The great fire roared within a bronze basin, but it was no ordinary flame. It coiled and writhed, shapes moving within it, wings, claws, faces half-formed and screaming. The voice came again, deeper than before, filling the room. You cannot unmake what was forged in dragon's blood. Serella raised her dagger. We can try. She leapt toward the basin, but the flame surged, striking like a serpent. She was thrown back, her cloak ablaze. Sam caught her, beating at the fire with his hands. The feather fell from his grasp and rolled toward the basin. The voice laughed. You are mine, Tarly. Your words, your thoughts, they are the ink that writes me anew. Sam's gaze fell upon the feather, glowing now with that same white light. Without thinking, he seized it and thrust it into the heart of the fire. The world shattered with light. A scream tore through the tower. Not human, not dragon, but both at once. The flame turned white, then gold, then burst into 1,000 shards that rained across the chamber like molten snow. When the light faded, Sam found himself kneeling beside the cold bronze basin. The fire was gone. The air was still. Serella lay beside him, breathing shallowly but alive, and in his hand, the feather had turned to ash. Below, the bells began to toll again, slow, uncertain, as if the city itself were waking from a long and terrible dream. Sam rose on trembling legs and looked toward the window. The beacon of the high tower was dark for the first time in living memory, but far out at sea, on the horizon, a faint red glow still burned, as though something vast and ancient had not yet finished dying. The day after the fire died, Oldtown did not wake to peace. The harbor lay shrouded in mist, and the sun rose weak and pale, as if afraid to look upon what had happened. Smoke still drifted from the top of the high tower, thin as a ghost's breath. The air carried a taste of salt and char that would not fade. Samwell Tarly stood on the upper balcony of the citadel, watching the sea. His hands were wrapped in linen where the flame had kissed them, though the burns were shallow. Serella sat beside him, her cloak torn and soot-stained, her dark eyes fixed on the ruined tower. Neither spoke for a long time. When at last she broke the silence, her voice was low. "It's quiet," she said. "Too quiet." Sam nodded, uneasy. "The beacon's gone out, for the first time in 1,000 years. Yet the light still glows beyond the horizon." He had seen it too, that strange red shimmer that burned where sea met sky, pulsing faintly, as if something vast and unseen still breathed beneath the waves. "The book's power came from fire," Serella murmured, "but fire never truly dies. It only changes form." Her words filled him with dread. "You think no Thrisser survived." "I think," she said slowly, "that it fled." They left the balcony and descended into the heart of the citadel. The corridors were half deserted. Many novices had fled during the night, fearing the wrath of the gods or the madness of the flames. Those who remained spoke little, moving like men walking through a dream. When Sam reached the library hall, he found Archmaester Ebros standing amid a circle of broken shelves. The old man's eyes were sunken, his beard singed at the ends. "Tarly," he said hoarsely, "what have you done?" Sam bowed his head. "I don't fully know, Archmaester. The fire came from beneath, from something bound long ago. We tried to stop it." Ebros looked at him sharply. "You meddled where wiser men kept their silence. The vault was sealed for a reason. Now the high tower stands dark and Oldtown trembles." "I didn't mean for any of this." "Meaning does not matter," the Archmaester said. "Only consequence." He turned away, his chain clinking faintly. "Marwyn is gone, the conclave in disarray, and the tides have turned red. There are whispers that this is the sign of the world's unmaking, that the doom of Valyria was not ended, only sleeping." Sam's throat tightened. "Then we must act before it wakes again." Ebros gave a bitter laugh. "You would act? You who unleashed it?" He gestured toward the sea. "If there is any salvation left, it lies not in Oldtown, but in the cold lands of the north, where fire's reach weakens. Go there if you wish to make amends. Go, and pray your courage outlasts your folly." When the Archmaester left, Serella stepped from the shadows. "He's right about one thing," she said. "Whatever rose here, it's not finished, and it will not stay beneath the sea." That night, as the bells of the harbor tolled the hour of the bat, they packed what little they could. Sam took only a few scrolls, his chain, and a raven bound for Castle Black. Serella carried her dragonglass dagger and a bundle of maps. Before they departed, Sam made one last journey down to the vault. The iron door hung open now, its hinges melted into strange shapes. Inside, the shelves were blackened, and the pedestal where the book had once lain was cracked clean through. Yet on the floor, amid the ashes, he found something that made his heart twist. A single page. It was unburnt, unmarked, its surface shimmering faintly. And on it, in red ink that seemed to pulse with its own light, were words written in both the common tongue and the language of Valyria. "When the chain is broken, the fire seeks the sea. When the sea turns red, the world shall burn again." He folded the page and hid it beneath his cloak. By dawn, the two of them had left Oldtown behind. They rode north through the Reach, along fields that glistened with dew and smoke. The small folk watched them pass with wary eyes. Some whispered prayers. Others made signs against evil. Word of the high tower's darkened flame had spread, twisted and exaggerated. Tales of ghosts in the beacon, of red dragons rising from the sea. By the 5th day, they reached Bitterbridge, where they found an inn with a thatched roof and a weary host. The man spoke as he poured their ale. "You came from Oldtown, then? Folks say the gods have turned their faces from the citadel. A storm's coming. You can smell it in the air." Sam forced a small smile. A storm indeed. When they were alone in their room, Serella spread her maps across the table. "If the fire moves north, we'll see signs of it. Red skies, dead rivers, sickness in the air." Sam nodded. "There's another reason I must go north. I sent ravens to Castle Black. Jon Snow, he was my brother in the watch. If anyone can help, it's him." "Help against what, Sam?" He hesitated, looking out the window. The moon hung red above the trees. "Against the fire that walks." That night, he dreamed again. He was standing on a black shore beneath a sky of ash. The sea boiled before him, and from its depths rose shapes of molten stone, dragons vast and broken, their wings torn, their eyes like molten gold. Among them stood a figure cloaked in fire. Nothrisser. The creature's voice rolled like thunder. "You thought to end me, little maester, but fire is memory. It burns in the blood of men, in the hearts of dragons. You cannot kill what has already been written." Sam awoke with a cry. The candle had burned low, and Serella slept beside the dying embers of the hearth. He rose quietly, wiping sweat from his brow, and stepped outside. The night was still. Yet in the distance, far beyond the hills, he saw a faint red shimmer upon the horizon, the same glow he had seen from Oldtown, moving now with the tide. It was not the light of dawn. The fire was following them. At first, he thought it a trick of fear, but by the next day, the signs grew clearer. The streams they crossed steamed faintly, and birds fled north in restless flocks. A smell of smoke lingered on the wind. By the time they reached the Mander, the waters ran dark and sluggish, streaked with red clay. Serella stared at it grimly. "It's spreading faster than we thought." Sam looked to the sky. "Then we must reach Winterfell before it does." The road ahead wound through mist and shadow, but neither turned back. Behind them, far to the south, the ruins of Oldtown glimmered faintly in the dying sun. A city once built on wisdom, now shrouded in the whisper of a single forbidden word: Nothrisser. And though the high tower's fire was dark, Sam could not shake the feeling that somewhere beneath the waves, the book still whispered, waiting for the next fool brave enough to listen. The wind had grown colder as they rode north, biting through wool and leather alike. The warmth of the south had fallen behind them. The air now carried the scent of pine, frost, and rain. Samwell Tarly felt it in his bones, not just the chill of weather, but a deeper cold, the kind that whispers of things old and waiting. For 10 days, he and Serella followed the river roads, keeping to the woods when they could. They avoided villages, for every town they passed was uneasy, whispering of omens. In Ashford, the fishers swore the river had boiled one night and cooled to ice by morning. In a hamlet near the Rose Road, fields lay blackened as if by unseen fire. Everywhere, folk spoke of a red glow that came and went on the southern horizon. By the 12th day, Sam could see it too. Even beneath gray clouds, a faint hue bled along the edge of the sky, like a dying ember that refused to fade. Serella kept her hood drawn, her sharp eyes scanning the hills. "It's moving faster," she said. "The sea's fire rides the wind now." Sam's thoughts turned to the page he carried hidden in his cloak, the one he had found in the vault's ashes. He could feel it sometimes, a faint heat against his chest, pulsing with his heartbeat. He feared to read it again, yet he could not part with it either. It felt less like parchment now, and more like something alive. That night, they found shelter in a ruined watchtower overlooking the Mander. The roof had fallen in, but the walls held strong. Serella lit a small fire, its smoke rising straight into the cold air. Sam sat wrapped in his cloak, watching the flames dance. "When I was a boy," he said quietly, "my father used to tell me that fire was the purest thing in the world, that it burned weakness away." Serella gave him a sidelong glance. "And did you believe him?" "No," Sam murmured, "but I wanted to." The silence between them stretched long. Outside, the wind moaned through the stones, carrying a faint, distant rumble, thunder, or perhaps something worse. When at last he slept, the dream came again. He was standing on the deck of a ship, drifting through fog. The water beneath glowed red, and from its depths rose shapes that twisted and writhed. Serpents of flame, dragons without wings. A voice whispered behind him, familiar and cold. "You flee from fire, yet carry it in your heart." Sam turned, and there it was, the book, open and burning, its pages turning without wind. From within its flame stepped a figure cloaked in ash, its face hidden, its eyes twin suns. No thrisser. "You broke the chain," it said, its voice like the crack of a forge. "But chains are only words, and words live in those who speak them." Sam reached for the feather that was no longer there. "What do you want from me?" The shadow smiled. "Only remembrance. Say my name, and the world will know me again." "I'll never..." But the fire surged, swallowing his voice. He awoke with a start, his heart pounding. The fire in their camp had gone out, though no wind had stirred. The ashes glowed faintly red. Serella was awake, standing by the broken archway, looking toward the south. "It's closer," she said without turning. "The sky burns." Sam rose, following her gaze. The horizon shimmered with dull crimson light, faint but growing. They broke camp before dawn. The next days passed in uneasy silence. The wind carried ash now, though no fires burned nearby. Animals had begun to flee the forests, their cries haunting the night. Sam's mind drifted constantly to the dream. He could still hear the voice echoing behind his thoughts. By the time they crossed the Green Fork, the world had turned gray. Snow began to fall, thin, dry flakes that hissed as they touched the earth. Yet beneath the cold, the ground steamed faintly. The air itself felt wrong, heavy with a kind of fevered stillness. At sunset, they reached a small hold-fast built of stone and timber. Its gates stood open, but no guards watched. Serella dismounted first, her hand on her dagger. "Something's happened here." They entered cautiously. The yard was empty. Horses stood tethered, their eyes wild and rolling. The smell of smoke hung thick in the air, though the fires had long since died. In the great hall, they found the cause. Bodies lay scattered across the floor, men, women, even children, all burned but not consumed. Their faces were blackened, their eyes turned to ash, and on the wall above the hearth, scrawled in soot, was a single word: Nothrisar. Sam staggered back, his stomach twisting. It's spreading through the living now. Serella knelt by one of the corpses, touching its hand. "No." "Look." Beneath the burned skin, faint lines of red light pulsed, slow, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. "They're not dead," she said softly. "Not entirely." Sam's voice trembled. "Then what are they?" "Vessels," she whispered. "It's using them to carry itself north." Before he could speak again, one of the bodies shuddered. Its chest rose once, and a faint, cracked voice slipped from its lips. "The chain is broken. The fire remembers. Serella grabbed Sam's arm. We're leaving. Now. They fled into the storm, snow and ash swirling together like ghosts. By midnight, they had reached the forest beyond the holdfast. Serella leaned against a tree, panting. It's not bound to one place anymore. It's in the air, in the water. Every time someone speaks its name, it grows stronger. Sam pressed a hand to his cloak where the hidden page lay. It felt hot against his skin, burning through the cloth. Then we must destroy the name itself. And how do you kill a word, Sam? He looked up at her, eyes fierce despite the fear in them. You write another to bind it. She frowned. You mean, yes, the dark tongue chained it once. There must be a way to forge a counterspell. A new chain. Serella shook her head. We'd need to know the oldest form of that language, the pure speech of Valyria before it fell. No one alive can speak it. Sam hesitated. Not no one. I read part of it. The book. It spoke to me in that tongue. I understood it once. Then you risk becoming what it wants, she said. If you use its words again, it will take root in you. He met her gaze. Then it's better I burn alone than the world with me. They set camp in silence. The fire crackled low, its glow faint through the falling snow. As Serella drifted into uneasy sleep, Sam opened his cloak and drew out the page. The letters shimmered faintly in red light. Slowly, he began to read. Not aloud, but in his mind, tracing the symbols with trembling fingers. The air thickened. The snow hissed as it touched the ground. The world seemed to lean closer, and faintly, beneath the whisper of wind, came a voice. The same voice, patient and cold. You cannot bind what was born unbound. Sam's hand clenched around the page. Watch me, he whispered. Far above the forest, the northern lights flickered, not green, but red. And in the distance, across the darkened hills, a low rumble rose, as if the sea itself had begun to breathe. The fire was not done. Not yet. The cold deepened as they rode farther north, though the snow that fell was not like true winter's snow. It came down gray, heavy with ash, and when it melted upon Samwell's gloves, it left a faint red smear. The sky above was the color of old iron, streaked with thin veins of crimson light that pulsed as if alive. The fire behind them had not died. It had simply taken root in the clouds. For many days they saw no living soul. Villages lay empty, their wells steaming faintly, their hearths cold. Even the crows had vanished. Yet at night, Sam could feel eyes watching from the trees, eyes that glowed dull and red for the briefest heartbeat before sinking into shadow again. Serella grew restless. She no longer slept long, nor did she let her hand stray far from her dagger. It's hunting, she murmured one morning as they rode beside a frozen stream. The fires found new breath somewhere. You can smell it in the wind. Sam nodded, though he did not tell her of the whispers he now heard when the world fell quiet. Soft, sibilant murmurings that echoed at the edge of thought. The voice of Nothrisser had grown patient again, but never silent. You seek to bind me, child of flesh, it whispered, but binding is my gift. My language is the chain that wraps the world. He tried to ignore it, yet every night his dreams grew darker. The book had burned, but in his sleep its pages turned still, and always he awoke with the faint taste of blood and ash on his tongue. By the time they crossed into the neck, the air stank of sulfur. Pools of bubbling mud steamed beside the road. Serella covered her mouth with a strip of cloth. We're riding over a wound, she said. Something has broken the earth beneath. At sunset, they reached Moat Caline, once a fortress, now a ruin swallowed by the swamp. The towers leaned like rotten teeth, their stones green with moss. No banners flew, yet faint traces of light flickered from the highest turret, pale and wavering. Sam and Serella tethered their horses and climbed the crumbling stair. The light led them to a small chamber near the top, where a man sat hunched over a brazier. His cloak was black, his hair streaked with gray, and his eyes shone sharp even in the dimness. "7 save me," Sam breathed. "Benjen Stark." The man looked up slowly. "Few remember that name now," he said. "The Night's Watch knows me as Cold Hands." Serella tensed, her blade half drawn, but Benjen raised a gloved hand. "Peace. I have no quarrel with you." His gaze settled on Sam. "I felt the fire moving south of the wall. I knew it was only a matter of time before it found a voice again. And now I see that voice wears a Maester's chain." Sam bowed his head. "I tried to stop it." "Trying is not stopping," Benjen said. He rose, the faint frost upon his cloak stirring. "The dead lands beyond the wall have begun to smoke again. The others stir restlessly in their graves, and even the cold burns. Tell me, Samwell Tarly, did you think you could wield the dark tongue without price?" "I only wanted to undo what I'd loosed." Benjen studied him for a long moment. "Then perhaps you still can." He reached into the brazier and drew out a fragment of obsidian shaped like a dagger's hilt. It did not burn his hand. "There is a place where fire and ice meet, the caverns beneath the wall. The first men carved wards there when the world was young. If any magic can bind fire again, it lies there." Sam took the shard reverently. "Then that's where I must go." Benjen nodded. "But you will not walk alone. The fire fears the blood of dragons and of Starks alike. Serella Sand, daughter of Dorne, you have one, and I the other. Between us, perhaps the chain can be reforged." For the first time in many days, hope stirred within Sam. They rested that night in the ruined hall, though sleep brought him little peace. He dreamed of a wall of black ice taller than the sky, its heart pulsing like a great frozen heart. Beneath it, a river of red flame coiled and waited. They left at dawn. The swamp swallowed their path, gray mist curling around their horses' legs. Benjen moved ahead, silent as smoke, guiding them northward through hidden causeways and half-frozen pools. By the 4th day, the ground rose and the air grew sharper. The taste of salt faded, replaced by the bite of true winter. Snow, real snow this time, fell thick upon their cloaks. Sam's heart lifted at the sight. For the first time since leaving Oldtown, the air smelled clean. But the reprieve did not last. That night, as they camped beneath a stand of twisted pines, a strange sound echoed through the woods, a low, rhythmic thrum, like drums beneath the earth. Benjen stiffened. "It's calling them." "Them?" Sam asked. Before the answer came, he saw them, shapes gliding between the trees, their bodies thin and black, their eyes burning red. Dozens, perhaps hundreds, men and women twisted by fire, their flesh charred yet unbroken, their mouths whispering the same word in unison. "Nothrisar." Serella drew her dragon-glass blade. "They're the ones from the holdfast." Benjen thrust a hand toward Sam. "The shard!" Sam held it out, and the obsidian flared with blue light. The creatures recoiled, hissing. One lunged forward, and Benjen's sword swept through its chest. The thing fell, crumbling into ash. "Run!" Benjen roared. "The fire drives them. They will not tire." They fled through the forest, the horde close behind. The air filled with the sound of crackling flames and the stench of burned flesh. Sam stumbled, nearly falling, but Serella caught his arm. This way! They burst from the trees into open snow where the northern lights shimmered faintly overhead. Ahead loomed a wall of ice, tall, endless, glimmering beneath the stars. The wall, Sam gasped. We've reached it. Benjen turned, his eyes like chips of frozen glass. Then through it we must go. He raised the obsidian shard high, and the ice before them groaned, splitting open to reveal a passage of blue light. They plunged inside, the air so cold it burned their lungs. Behind them, the cries of the burning dead faded into the distance. At last, they emerged into a vast cavern beneath the wall. The air shimmered faintly, caught between frost and heat. Stalactites of ice hung from the ceiling, each glowing with pale fire. In the center of the cavern stood an ancient altar, carved from both obsidian and ice. Upon it burned a small flame, white as snow, cold as death. Benjen bowed his head. The first fire, pure, before corruption. Sam stepped closer. The page within his cloak grew warm again, almost painfully so. The red light from the letters bled through the fabric. Serella's voice trembled. It's reacting. Sam drew the page out and laid it upon the altar. The flame flared, white meeting red. For a heartbeat, the two colors warred, and then the voice came again, low and furious. You think cold can chain me, Meister? I am in every breath of flame, every spark struck from steel. The cavern shook. The ice cracked. Benjen thrust the obsidian shard into Sam's hands. Speak the words, Samwell Tarly. Forge the chain anew. Sam closed his eyes. The dark tongue rose unbidden in his mind. He spoke, the syllables twisting like molten iron. The white flame rose higher. The red fought back. The air turned blinding. When the light finally died, the page was gone. The altar lay cold. And Sam knelt upon the floor, the obsidian shard fused into his Meister's chain, its black link still smoking. Benjen and Serella stood silent, staring at him. Outside, the storm had broken. For the first time in many months, no red light burned on the horizon, but deep beneath the ice in the darkness of the earth, something vast shifted and sighed, content, for now, to sleep. Days passed before Samwell Tarly dared believe the silence was real. The wall stood unbroken, its blue shadows stretching to the horizon. The wind blew cold and clean once more, carrying no scent of ash or burning. Still, he did not sleep easily. He felt the weight of the new link in his chain, the shard of black obsidian fused by the altar's fire, and sometimes, when the night was very still, it pulsed faintly against his skin. They had taken refuge in one of the old way forts at the base of the wall. It was little more than a shell of ice and stone, abandoned years ago, but its hearth burned well enough. Benjen kept watch through the long hours, standing unmoving by the door, his breath forming no mist in the air. Serella slept little, poring over her maps by the flickering firelight. Sam wrote. He wrote everything he remembered. The vault of the untranslated, the book, the name, the fire that would not die. Each word steadied his hand, though part of him feared that setting the tale to parchment would give it life again. Still, a maester's duty was to remember and to warn. When he finished, Serella looked up. Will you send that south? She asked softly. Not yet, Sam said. The citadel will call it heresy. Better they never know the full truth until it's too late to misuse it. Serella frowned. Knowledge hidden is knowledge lost. Some truths are meant to sleep. At that, Benjen turned from the door. Truth never sleeps long, he said. The wall remembers. So does the fire. Balance is all that keeps the world from burning again. Sam did not answer. He stared into the hearth instead, watching the flames dance. They were ordinary flames, yellow and orange, warm against the cold. Yet every now and then he thought he glimpsed a flicker of red within them, faint as a heartbeat. The next morning dawned gray and still. Frost crusted the horses' manes. Benjen stood at the edge of the woods, his eyes fixed northward. "The cold grows sharper," he said. "The others stir. I feel it in the ground." Serella pulled her cloak tighter. "Then we should head south, before the paths close." But Benjen shook his head. "Not yet. The fire you chained will call to its opposite. The wall holds both forces in its heart, ice and flame, bound together since the dawn of men. We must be certain it endures." Sam's heart sank. "You think the spell failed?" "I think it changed the battlefield," Benjen said. "The flame is no longer free, but neither is it gone. It sleeps beneath the ice, and if the wall ever falls—" He left the thought unfinished. They climbed the ice stair that day, ascending through the blinding glare of the northern sun. The wall's surface shone like polished glass, so smooth it seemed unnatural. From the top, the world spread out before them, white wilderness stretching into forever. No smoke rose from beyond, no movement stirred. "It looks dead," Serella said quietly. "Not dead," Benjen replied. "Waiting." Sam stared across the frozen waste, shivering despite the fur at his collar. He felt the obsidian link pulse once, faint but sure. He wondered whether the darkness below could feel the cold above, whether the ancient fire whispered still within its crystal tomb. When they descended, they found tracks in the snow outside the fort. Fresh ones, too heavy for man or beast. They led east, toward the tree line, and vanished. Benjen knelt, pressing a hand to the ground. "The fire's mark," he murmured. "Something's come through." Serella drew her dagger. "The dead?" Benjen's eyes narrowed. "No, not dead. Not yet." They followed the tracks into the forest. The trees grew twisted here, their trunks blackened as if licked by old flame. In a clearing ahead, the snow had melted to mud, and in its center lay a mound of stone, half collapsed. Sam felt a tremor run through the ground beneath his boots. Serella approached cautiously. "A burial cairn," she said, "but not northern work." The stones were etched with faint lines, worn by time, but still visible. Symbols like those Sam had seen in the vault of the untranslated, the same script that had named Nothrisser. "Valyrian runes," Sam breathed. "Here, beyond the wall?" Benjen's face darkened. There were Valyrians who fled before the doom, who sought to master the cold as they had fire. Perhaps one of them built this. As Sam bent to look closer, the air grew heavy. His breath misted white. A faint red glow seeped from between the stones. "Step back," Benjen ordered, but too late. The mound split down the middle with a crack like thunder. A gust of heat burst outward, melting the snow. From within, a shape rose, tall, thin, its skin like molten glass shot through with veins of fire. Eyes of gold opened slowly. Serella gasped. "A man?" "No," Sam said hoarsely. "A vessel." The figure's mouth moved, and a voice older than men filled the air. "You cannot bury flame in ice forever." Benjen thrust his sword forward, its blade shimmering pale blue. The creature raised a hand and fire met frost. Steam roared between them, blinding white. Sam fell back, shielding his face. The ground split beneath him, cracks glowing red. Serella hurled her dragonglass dagger. It struck the creature's chest, and for a heartbeat, the light within it faltered. Benjen's sword flashed. With one final blow, he drove the blade through the creature's heart. A sound like a sigh escaped it, and the light went out. When the steam cleared, Nothing remained but blackened stone and melting snow. Benjen stood unmoving, his sword still in hand. "It wasn't the same fire," he said quietly. "It was a fragment, a spark." Sam stared at the ashes. "Then there are others." "Aye," Benjen said. "The doom scattered them across the world, pieces of the same soul, searching for warmth to call home. They returned to the fort in silence. That night, Sam could not sleep. He sat by the fire, clutching his chain. The obsidian link pulsed faintly, almost like breath. When dawn came, Benjen was gone. His footprints led north and vanished into the snow. He had left no word, only his sword leaning against the wall. Serella found Sam standing where the tracks ended. "He's gone to finish it," she said softly. "He'll never return," Sam whispered. "No," she agreed, "but he'll buy us time." They stood together, watching the horizon lighten with dawn. The wind carried no scent of smoke. Yet deep in the ice, Sam thought he heard it again, that faint whisper, patient and eternal. When ice remembers, fire wakes. He closed his eyes. Far to the south, in the citadel's vaults, a single candle flickered red, a lone spark that refused to die. Winter had sharpened its teeth. The snows deepened. The nights stretched long and cold, and the wind that swept across the wall howled like a living thing. Samwell Tarly and Serella Sand endured it in silence, their fire burning low, their hearts heavy with the weight of what they had seen. Benjen Stark was gone, swallowed by the endless white, and though neither spoke of it, both knew he would not return. The wall groaned in the stillness as though remembering old pain. Sometimes, in the deepest hours of night, Sam would hear it crack like thunder. But no ice fell, and no storm followed. The sound came from within. It was the sound of something moving in its heart. Serella noticed it too. One morning, she stood by the watchtower's edge, staring northward. "It's restless," she said, "like a beast turning in its sleep." Sam nodded wearily. Benjen said the wall holds both fire and ice. Perhaps the binding stirs them both. And if it breaks? He didn't answer. They stayed another fortnight in the way fort beneath the wall, waiting for word, for peace, for anything. None came. The ravens that nested in the broken rookery refused to fly. The air hummed faintly at times, not sound, but a vibration that touched the bones, like a distant drumbeat. Sam tried to busy himself with study. He copied the runes he remembered from the cairn, drew maps of the frozen passes, wrote down every dream and omen he could recall. His quill scratched long into the nights while Serella kept watch. But each page he filled seemed to whisper back to him. The letters swam when he looked too long, red where they should have been black. More than once, he woke with ink-stained fingers and words upon the parchment he did not remember writing. When fire sleeps, words dream. When words wake, so does flame. He burned that page in the hearth, yet the words lingered in his mind. On the 19th day, they heard the horns. 3 blasts, long and mournful, echoing across the snows. The sound came from the east, where the wall curved toward the sea. Serella rose at once. "The watch." "No," Sam said softly, his blood running cold. "Not the watch, the wall itself." They mounted their horses and rode hard through the cold, the wind cutting their faces raw. By dusk, they reached Eastwatch by the sea, or what remained of it. The stronghold was half buried in snow. Smoke drifted from the ramparts, and men moved like shadows against the firelight. Black brothers stood among the ruins, their faces pale and grim. One recognized Sam and ran to him. "Maester Tarly, 7 bless us. We thought you lost." Sam slid from his saddle, his legs trembling. What happened? The ranger's eyes were wide. The ice cracked, sir. The sea boiled. A light rose from beneath the wall, red as a wound. It burned through the frost like blood through water. Serella exchanged a glance with Sam. The fire's still alive. They followed the ranger to the edge of the wall. There, at its base, where the ice met the sea, a fissure glowed faintly crimson, spreading upward like a vein through glass. Steam hissed from it, though the air was freezing. One of the Black brothers knelt beside it, crossing himself. "It came last night," he whispered. "We poured snow to cool it, but the snow turned to mist. The wall's bleeding fire, Maester." Sam knelt, peering into the crack. The light was pulsing, faint but steady, like a heartbeat. He reached out, and the heat pricked his skin even through his glove. Serella caught his arm. "Don't touch it." He looked up, fear and awe mingling in his eyes. "It's not spreading from below," he said. "It's coming from within, from the binding itself." "Then the chain's breaking," Serella said. Sam rose slowly, staring at the glowing ice. "If it fails, the wall will fall." That night they camped in the shattered hall of Eastwatch. The brothers of the watch gathered around them, grim-faced and weary. Sam told them as much as he dared, of the ancient fire, of the doom that had not died, of the name that burned the world. When he finished, silence filled the hall. An old steward spoke at last. "You mean to say the fire in the wall could wake again?" Sam nodded. "It was chained by ice, but the binding weakens. We must strengthen it, or all Westeros will burn." The ranger who had found them frowned. "And how does one bind fire with words?" Sam looked into the flames. "The same way it was done before, with the dark tongue. Only now we must speak both, fire and ice, as one." Serella's gaze sharpened. "That means you'll need to use it again." He hesitated. "Yes." She shook her head. "You'll kill yourself, or worse. If it saves the world, then so be it." When morning came, the crack in the wall had widened. Red light bled across the snow like dawn. Sam stood before it, his maester's chain cold against his neck. The obsidian link pulsed faintly, echoing the rhythm within the ice. He closed his eyes and began to speak. The dark tongue came unbidden to his lips, ancient syllables shaped by fire. The wind howled as he spoke, and the snow began to swirl in spirals around him. Then he changed the tone. The words of the old tongue, harsh and deep, born of the north. Fire and ice, woven together. The air split with a sound like shattering glass. A column of light burst from the fissure, blinding white at its core and red at its edges. The ground trembled. The wall groaned as if in pain. Serella shouted his name, but Sam did not stop. "By the blood of flame and the breath of frost," he cried, "be bound as one and sleep again." The light flared, brighter than any sun. The crack sealed. For a heartbeat, the world was still. Then the fire rushed into him. It filled his veins like molten gold, burned through his heart, poured into his thoughts. He saw cities in ruin, dragons screaming, oceans of flame devouring the land. He saw the doom itself, and within it, 1,000 eyes watching through the smoke. "You cannot silence me," the voice said. "I am the word behind all words. You are but my echo." Sam screamed. He fell to his knees, the world spinning around him. When he awoke, the light was gone. The crack in the wall had vanished, sealed with smooth blue ice. Serella knelt beside him, her face streaked with tears. "It's done," she whispered. "The fire's gone." Sam tried to speak, but no sound came. His throat was raw, his chest hollow. He felt no warmth, no pain, only a deep, ringing silence within. Serella helped him to his feet. "You bound it again," she said, "but you bound yourself with it, didn't you?" He looked at her, his eyes dull and distant. The chain needed a link. They left Eastwatch as the sun rose pale and cold. The wall gleamed behind them, whole once more. Yet in the heart of the ice, faint as memory, a single black shape glimmered, a maester's link frozen deep within. And somewhere far away, beyond the reach of sight, the sea still burned red beneath the waves. Winter's breath clung to the land like a shroud. The days shortened to brief gray flickers between nights that never seemed to end. Snow fell in thick, soundless veils, and the world grew still, too still. In that silence, Serella Sand rode south alone. She carried with her only two things: the dragon-glass dagger that had once pierced a creature of flame, and a raven-black feather wrapped in cloth, the last remnant of Samwell Tarly. The wall had vanished behind her, swallowed by the mist. No rider had followed her from Eastwatch. No bird took to the air. She rode through a land of ghosts and memory, her horse's hooves muffled beneath the snow. Sam's body had not burned when he fell. His heart had ceased, yet his flesh had turned to frost. The fire had taken him, but in a way no pyre ever could. When Serella touched his face that last time, it was cold as the ice itself, and his eyes, once soft and fearful, were clear, pale, and endless. The chain needed a link, he had said, and then he was gone. Now, as she descended from the frozen north, those words rang in her ears like a prophecy. At first, she thought she rode through empty country, but the deeper she went into the neck, the more she sensed the wrongness. The snow melted too quickly. The streams smoked faintly. The trees, black and leafless, glistened as if dew had frozen on them. But when she touched the bark, it was warm. By the third night, the red shimmer returned. It appeared faintly on the horizon at first, no brighter than the memory of a flame. Then, as she made camp beneath a twisted pine, it pulsed once, twice, and the air stirred with a low, distant rumble. She woke to the sound of crackling earth. The frozen stream beside her steamed and split, releasing a hiss of heat and the smell of burning metal. She snatched the dagger from her belt and looked to the south. The glow was no longer faint. It danced now upon the clouds, a living ember in the sky. "The sea burns again," she whispered. Her horse shied, eyes wide with fear. Serella mounted swiftly and rode through the night, her cloak snapping behind her. She followed the river road, winding between black hills and ice-veiled marshes. Each mile she traveled, the air grew warmer. By dawn, she reached a hilltop and saw it, a vast wound in the earth, miles wide, where once the Mander flowed free. Now it glowed with red light, molten rock churning where water had been, and above it, like a shadow of smoke given life, a shape coiled and turned, vast, luminous, half seen through the haze. A dragon, not of flesh and bone, but of fire. It rose slowly, its wings spreading like two burning sails. Where it passed, snow turned to steam, trees burst into flame. The creature's body rippled with molten veins, its eyes twin furnaces. Serella's horse bolted, screaming. She tumbled from the saddle into the snow and rolled, clutching the dagger tight. The air blazed with heat. The snow hissed and vanished around her. She crawled to her knees and stared, wide-eyed, as the dragon turned its gaze upon her. Its voice came not from its mouth, but from the ground itself, rumbling through the bones of the world. "The link is forged." Serella's breath caught. "Sam? He sleeps beneath the ice," the voice said, "but I wake in his stead, Fire cannot die while men remember its name. No thrisser. She rose slowly, her dagger gleaming black in the crimson light. You'll burn the world again. The dragon's vast head tilted, molten eyes narrowing. It was never mine to burn. Men kindle the flame and call it curse or gift as they please. Serella's heart pounded. Then end it. Sleep again. Leave us to the cold. And when the cold devours you, when night comes without dawn, I am Balance, daughter of the sun. Without me, the world freezes in shadow. She shook her head. You're no Balance. You're hunger given voice. The dragon's form flickered, its edges wreathed in sparks. For a heartbeat, she saw a figure within the fire. A man's outline, cloaked, heavy-shouldered, a chain around his neck. Sam, she whispered again. The voice softened. Fire is not good or evil, Serella. It simply is. I am what men make of me. The flames dimmed, the molten glow flickering uncertainly. Serella felt something stir in her chest, a memory of Sam's steady voice, his trembling courage, the gentle way he had once held the feather as though it were holy. You can still choose, she said. You bound yourself to the wall to keep the fire from waking. Don't undo your own sacrifice. The dragon shuddered, a sound like the cracking of mountains. Choice is the illusion of mortals. I am word and will. I am the breath of the world. The ground split beneath her feet. Lava burst upward in a blinding spray. Serella threw herself aside, landing hard upon the stones. The dragon-glass dagger flew from her hand and slid toward the edge of the chasm. Seven, save me, she gasped, crawling after it. The heat burned her palms. She seized the hilt just as the ground trembled again. The dragon's wings beat once, sending a storm of cinders across the valley. Your world will not freeze nor burn, it thundered. It will remember. That is enough. Serella rose to her knees, clutching the dagger. Then remember this. She drove the blade into the ground. A sound like thunder split the air. The dragon glass glowed white, brighter than snow, brighter than flame. The fire recoiled from it, screaming. For a heartbeat, the dragon's shape faltered. The molten light dimmed, the sky darkened, and in that instant she saw Sam again, his face within the flame, serene and sorrowful. You cannot kill me, he said softly, but you can carry me. The fire rushed toward her, not to burn but to enter. It struck like lightning, searing through her chest, through her blood, through her soul. She screamed once, the sound echoing across the valley. Then silence. When the light faded, the chasm had cooled to stone. The air was still. The dragon was gone. Serella lay upon the scorched ground, the dagger beside her hand. Her eyes were open, their color changed, no longer brown but pale as glass, faint light flickering within. Far to the north, beneath the wall, a single pulse trembled through the ice. Not fire, not frost, but something between. The chain had not broken. It had merely changed its bearer. And somewhere deep in her heart, where two forces met and stilled, Serella heard a whisper, calm, endless, and familiar. The words remain. Sleep now until the world forgets. When the snows of winter melt, they leave behind bones, of men, of beasts, of things that never had names. Years later, travelers would speak of a black valley south of the neck, a place where the earth itself seemed burned, where no grass grew, and the stones whispered when the wind blew from the sea. Few dared to linger there. Fewer still noticed the faint shimmer that haunted the air, like the ghost of heat over cooling coals. It was in that desolate hollow that a figure stirred. Serella Sand opened her eyes. She did not know how much time had passed. The sky was pale with dawn, and a crust of frost coated her cloak. Beneath her lay stone, smooth, scorched, and cold as death. Her heartbeat thudded weakly in her ears. The dragon glass dagger still rested in her hand, its edge dulled to gray. She sat up slowly, her breath fogging. Her body ached as if the world had pressed its weight upon her. Memory returned in pieces. The dragon of flame, the voice like thunder, the fire that had entered her like a flood of light. And Sam. For a long time, she could not move. When she did, she found that her hands no longer trembled in the cold. The frost melted where her skin touched it. She pulled back her glove, staring at the faint red shimmer beneath her palm. It pulsed softly, like a second heartbeat. The fire had not died. It lived within her now. "Seven, save me," she whispered, though her voice was not her own. It echoed faintly, doubled, as if another voice spoke with hers. The wind shifted, carrying a distant sound, the cry of a raven. Serella looked up. 3 black shapes wheeled high above, circling the valley. For the first time in weeks, she saw life. The sight stirred something within her, relief perhaps, or grief too deep to name. She rose and began walking. The land was ruined for miles around. Hills lay split and smoldering, and rivers hissed where they met the scorched ground. Yet beyond that wasteland, the forests of the Reach still stood, blackened at their edges, but alive. She moved toward them, leaving faint trails of steam in the snow where her boots touched. For days she wandered south, sleeping little, eating less. She felt neither hunger nor cold. Her dreams were filled with whispers, not of madness, but of memory. Words in the dark tongue, ancient and soft, curling through her thoughts like smoke. Sometimes she thought she heard Sam's voice among them, calm and distant. "Fire and ice, bound as one," he would say, "so long as both remember." When she reached the riverlands, she found them changed. Winter had retreated there, though no spring followed. The rivers ran high and red with silt. Small folk had begun to return to their villages, whispering of omens, of stars that fell into the sea, of a wall of flame seen far to the south. In an inn by the banks of the Blackwater, she overheard a group of sellswords speaking of Oldtown. "They say the high tower burns still at night," one said, nursing his ale. "A thin light, red as blood, flickering behind the stone." Some claimed to hear bells tolling from beneath the sea. Another spat into the fire. "Cursed place. Maesters there dug too deep into secrets meant for dragons and gods. Let the city drown in its own wisdom, I say." Serella rose without thinking. The Maesters, the citadel, Oldtown. That was where it had begun. Perhaps that was where it must end. She left before dawn. The journey south was long and strange. Wherever she passed, the air grew warmer. Frost melted on the trees. Fields dead since autumn sprouted faint green shoots. Farmers crossed themselves when she passed and whispered that the Red Maid walked the roads again. In some villages they offered her bread. In others, they barred their doors. By the time she reached the borders of the Reach, the sea's scent was in the air again. She saw Oldtown's spire in the distance, dark by day, yet shimmering faintly as dusk fell. The high tower stood silent now, its windows black, its beacon long extinguished. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, a single red flame flickered at its crown. Serella crossed the Honeywine by the old bridge and entered the city. It was quieter than she remembered. The harbor was half empty, many ships having fled after the fall of the beacon. Yet the citadel still stood, proud and cold. The ravens in its towers croaked as she passed beneath the archway. The Maesters met her in the courtyard, their chains clinking softly. Archmaester Ebros was among them, his hair white as frost. He squinted as she approached. "Who comes to us in the night?" he demanded. Serella threw back her hood. "A friend of Samwell Tarly." Murmurs rippled through the gathered scholars. Ebros's face darkened. "That name is forbidden in these halls. The man brought ruin upon us." "He brought warning," she said sharply. "You ignored it." Ebros frowned. "You speak boldly for a stranger." "I speak as one who carries what he carried." The old maester's gaze fell to her hands, to the faint red light that pulsed beneath her skin. His eyes widened. "Seven save us," he whispered. "The flame." "It sleeps," she said, "but not forever. The wall holds, yet cracks will come again. You must prepare." Ebros drew back as if struck. "You expect us to trust the word of a witch?" "Trust nothing," Serella said. "Learn, record, remember." Her voice echoed across the stones. Something in it made the other maesters flinch, not from fear, but reverence. She turned to leave, but Ebros caught her sleeve. "What are you, truly?" She met his gaze. For a moment he saw it, the faint light behind her eyes, red and gold entwined. "I am what remains," she said. That night, she climbed the steps of the high tower. The door at the top was sealed, but when she touched it, the stone softened beneath her fingers like wax. She entered the beacon chamber, where once Sam had thrust the feather into flame. The room was dark, save for the heart of the brazier, where a single coal glowed faintly. She knelt before it. "I kept my promise," she whispered, "but the world will forget. It always does." The coal pulsed, faint light breathing in time with her heart. Serella drew the dragon-glass dagger from her belt and placed it beside the flame. "Let this be your chain," she said softly. "Your word and mine." The fire brightened, spreading through the room, warm and golden. Outside, the bells of Oldtown began to toll. When the first light of dawn touched the sea, the high tower's beacon shone again, not red nor white, but gold, pure and steady. The small folk looked up from their boats and marveled, whispering that the gods had returned to bless the city. No one saw the figure that descended the tower at dawn, cloak pale as frost, eyes dimmed of their light. Serella Sand walked into the rising sun, leaving no tracks in the snow. Far in the north, beneath the wall, a faint glow stirred once more, not of fire nor of ice, but of both entwined, sleeping as one. The world turned and remembered. The years that followed were uneasy ones. The snows receded, the seas calmed, and the realm forgot, as realms always do. Meisters wrote of the long winter's end and the strange lights that had flickered across the sky, but they did not write of Samwell Tarly or of the book in the dark tongue. The citadel sealed those pages deep within its vaults once more, under lock and key and silence. Yet there were whispers. In Oldtown, sailors spoke of the high tower's golden flame that never dimmed, a light unlike any other, neither fire nor lantern, but something older, softer, alive. They said it shone even through storm and mist, that no wind could quench it, and that those who looked upon it too long dreamed of both snow and flame. And far to the north, the wall still stood, but the black brothers who kept watch there told strange tales. Sometimes, on the coldest nights, they said they heard the sound of a quill scratching somewhere deep beneath the ice. Once, a ranger found words carved upon a block of frozen stone, words in no tongue known to man, yet they glowed faintly red when touched by moonlight. The world had moved on, but the world does not truly forget. In the spring of the 15th year after the fire of Oldtown, a raven flew north bearing a message sealed with gold. It came to Castle Black in the dead of night, when the wind screamed through the cracks and the candles guttered low. The maester there was a young woman, barely past her vows, with dark hair and eyes like storm water. She called herself Maester Elira. When she broke the seal, she found but one line written in a hand she did not know. Come south, the light falters. That same night, the wall groaned, a sound deep and mournful, like ice weeping. Elira climbed the steps to the top and gazed southward. There, on the farthest edge of sight, the high tower's flame shimmered faintly gold, but as she watched, it dimmed, and for a heartbeat, she thought she saw red gleam through the mist. She left before dawn. Her journey was long and lonely. Spring had come to the north, but it was a sickly spring. Snow melting too fast, rivers running red with silt. In the villages she passed, the small folk spoke of strange weather, of rain that steamed as it fell, and of lights that danced on the horizon, though no storm brewed. When at last she reached Oldtown, she found it changed. The high tower still shone, but the citadel had grown quiet. Few maesters walked the marble courts. The ravens in their cages beat their wings restlessly, and a warmth unnatural to the season clung to the air. Elira crossed the bridge over the Honeywine and found the gates unguarded. Inside, dust covered the halls. Scrolls lay unrolled upon the floors, as if abandoned mid-study. The silence was heavy as a tomb. She followed it upward, the faint hum that drew her step by step, until she stood once more in the beacon chamber at the tower's crown. The golden flame still burned. Yet when she approached, she saw that it trembled, its light thin and flickering. The air around it shimmered with heat, and beneath that shimmer she glimpsed something else. A shape, faint as breath on glass. A woman's face. For a moment, Elira thought it a trick of the fire, but then the face turned, and she saw that its eyes were pale as ice, its expression calm, sorrowful. "Who are you?" Elira whispered. The flame rippled, and a voice came soft and distant, like an echo through the ages. "I was called Serella Sand, but names are only ashes now." Elira stepped closer, heart hammering. "You're a spirit?" "A memory," the voice said. A word once spoken, still repeating. "You stand where a fire was chained, and chains must always weaken." Elira looked into the heart of the light. "You called me here?" "Yes." The flame pulsed faintly. "The fire stirs again. Beneath the waves it waits, and in the hearts of men who dream of dragons. The world will kindle itself anew, unless the words are remembered rightly." Elira's hands trembled. "Then teach me." The light brightened, and the walls seemed to hum with it. "There is a book," the voice said, "hidden where the citadel fears to look, in the vault of the untranslated, bound in chains of iron. Within it lie the names of all fires, the old and the new. Find it. Read not the words, but their silences." The flame dimmed, and the chamber grew cold. Elira called out, but the voice did not answer again. She left the tower at dawn. The maesters who remained watched her with hollow eyes, saying nothing as she descended into the depths. The vault was sealed, as it had always been, but when her hand touched the door, it opened with a sigh, as if recognizing her. The air within was heavy, thick with the scent of old parchment and dust. She found the book at once, a great dark tome lying upon an obsidian pedestal. The letters on its cover shifted faintly in the gloom, red upon black. She did not touch it. Not yet. Instead, she knelt before it and whispered, "Samwell Tarly, guide me." The silence that followed was complete, and then, very softly, came the sound of a single page turning by itself. The letters upon the parchment glowed faintly, and Elira felt warmth spread through her fingertips, though she had not moved. The words there were simple. Fire binds, ice remembers. One must not outlast the other. A breath escaped her lips. She understood then what the voice had meant. The fire could never be slain, only balanced. If forgotten, it would rise unchained. If worshipped, it would consume. It must live in quiet, in memory. She closed the book, her hands steady now. When she left the vault, the air of the citadel had cooled. The golden flame of the high tower shone steady once more, neither bright nor dim, but constant. The ravens in their cages were silent, as if listening. That night, Maester Elira sat by the river and wrote her own words upon a single scroll. The world endures between fire and frost. The one teaches fear, the other patience. Between them lies wisdom and the names of those who remembered. She sealed it with black wax and placed it among the citadel's countless scrolls, unlabeled, unremarked. Then she looked toward the sea, where a faint shimmer of red light moved beneath the waves. It was not menacing now, but familiar, a heartbeat of the world, old and necessary. Elira smiled faintly. "Sleep, Samwell," she murmured. "Sleep, Serella. The fire remembers." And as the night deepened over Oldtown, the high tower's golden flame burned on, silent, patient, eternal, its light neither consuming nor fading, but simply being. For such is the way of all things born of fire and ice, to burn, to freeze, and, in the spaces between, to endure.